Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Faster by, good afternoon. Welcome to Mannin Line on Manx Radio. Today it's all about Enterprise, the Department for Enterprise, with Tim Johnston, MHK, the Minister, and Andrew Stewart as here, the Chief Officer. So if you want to get in touch, ask about Digital Isle of Man, Finance Isle of Man, Business Isle of Man, Visit Isle of Man, Locate Isle of Man. Really the business for the Isle of Man, and this is the department that's engaged with getting it to where it needs to be to earn some money for us, which obviously pays for public services. So from now till 1, it's Enterprise on Manx Radio on Mannin Line. First of all, Faster Mai, good afternoon. Tim Johnston, Faster Mai, good afternoon.
Faster Mai.
Okay, and Andy Stewart is Chief Officer. Andy Stewart. Hi, Andy.
Andy, pleasure to be back.
Good to talk to you. Right, Tim Johnston, first of all. It's a big department, and there are lots of obviously agencies, executive agencies. So overall, are we going in the right direction, Tim Johnston?
Yes, I think we are, Andy. I mean, I say that in full recognition of the challenges we've seen over the last few years, and continuing as we look at the news every day, we recognise some of the existential challenges we have across the world, which obviously have a direct effect on us. What we've had to try and do through this whole period now, and right since post-COVID really, and this administration coming in, is making sure that we're there to support the economy, support jobs. It's great to see that we've got 37,000 private jobs in the economy. We've kept low unemployment. We've maintained a good AA3 rating with Moody's. I think our core of our economy has held up very well. It's been challenging. There are obviously big challenges, and we know certain sectors more than others have had big issues. But overall, I think we have to be realistic about the challenges, but also optimistic, and the agencies that are there to work very closely with all of the sectors. We've got people sitting on those agencies from the sectors who give their time. So this is not government saying these things. These are the very people who are running these businesses, very much involved at the heart of the decision making, and that's really important.
That's interesting in that it's not top down, is it? You've got these executive agencies. Do they formulate policy themselves, or do they enact your policy?
Well, ultimately, obviously, we have the broad policy set through the Island Plan and economic strategy, but absolutely, when it comes to those individual sectors through the agencies, they are very much driving the decision making, but what they want to prioritise, what they want to see happen, and getting the funding in place to do that. So they are very much at the heart of the decision making. Okay. Yes,
and they will all have their own challenges. I mean, things like Business Isle of Man, exporting and importing. The story of the sting packet will always come up about the cost of getting stuff off the Isle of Man and getting stuff on the Isle of Man. So where do you fit in there? Do you facilitate any conversations?
Yes, we do. I think through the business agency, we have logistics are an important part of that. So those conversations we have with the steam packet are important. As you'll be aware, there's a process at the moment looking at the sea services agreement. We were very much part of and fed into that whole process of making sure that we need to make sure that the sort of what I call the socio-economic needs of the island are very much taken into account when we're looking at freight and we're looking at transport and connectivity generally. And it's not just about the steam packet, it's air links as well. We recognise the challenges of living on an island, and these things will always be expensive. We do recognise the challenges. We do have close contact with businesses in that sector, and make sure that we keep up to date with the problems.
Okay, Andy Stewart, the Chief Officer, obviously. It's a clumsy metaphor, but you're almost like a ringmaster. You've had the executive agencies circling around the department, and you're in the middle. How do you maintain correspondence with people all the time? Do you have daily meetings, weekly meetings? How does it work?
So it actually works quite fluidly, and I think it's really important that we have the executive agency model to feed in on the business development side. Yeah. The idea of people with expertise from the business sectors they represent in their inputting into policy development, as you touched on. Promotion and new products, I think, is a key part of our kind of approach to it. It shouldn't just be about civil servants perhaps sat at the centre. But does it create challenges? Yes, but I think that's a really healthy challenge. I think it's a healthy challenge to have established policies and practices tested and new products and new things to kind of expand the sectors. I think that works quite well. Yeah. We shouldn't forget, there only represents a section of the department. The department also comprises professional registries across central registries, companies registry, air and ship registries, which are really important both locally and internationally, as well as broader, what people might think are more typically government roles in policy, strategy development and legislation. So the whole thing works actually quite well together.
Yeah. It used to be economic development before, didn't it? It was economic development. So the whole point of having the agencies, did that work before when there was a minister in the middle trying to run the whole of economic development? What I'm trying to say is it better with the executive agencies?
So I think it's improved in terms of putting businesses at the heart of that decision making, or industry leaders or industry experts at the heart of that decision making. Don't forget the core purpose of the department. The department itself does not create economic growth. Right. That we rely on the business sectors, private industry to do that. That's absolutely right. But I think we are there to enable it. So whether that's through regulation, innovation, legislation, that's how typically the island has developed its economy in the past. And it is exactly the way it will develop its economy in the future. So having that different model where business leaders, industry experts are at the heart of that decision making for those specific elements, I think is the fundamental difference. And
that's the interesting point which you highlighted, in that it's not the department's job to get economic development. It's the department's job to facilitate economic development. Is that right, Tim Glover? Tim Johnston?
Yeah, it is. I think, we want to make sure that I've sort of used the phrase in the past, sort of that playing field, really. You need to get the playing field set out and everything working. You need the referee, you need the legislation, you need the framework, but you've got to let business then get on and do their job. And, it is our job to try and make that as smooth as possible. That can be challenging. But again, that's why it is important to have these individuals sitting on the agencies, because they can give us that real account of what the challenges are and then help us to try and, get over some of those issues. And where we can see we can help and support businesses through our grants, for example, or whether it's helping new businesses start with our micro business grant scheme and other areas where we can help businesses look at their efficiencies, whether for energy efficiency, or give them some consultation advice, sometimes in free advice. Whatever we can do to help businesses have the confidence to go forward is key. And to me, that is the key. All of this it is about confidence. Yeah. And in a really challenging world, as we're seeing today, where confidence is getting battered, that is a challenge. But it's our job to try and give businesses the confidence to invest, to move forward, to create jobs.
And that's a very interesting point, in that confidence is intangible. It's a non-tangible out. You have to, if you like, you've got to have confidence. You've got to give people reassurance that things are going to be as they are. And I just want to come on to something that happens later on this year, and that's Moneyval. And obviously, at the moment, everybody is in a holding position because of Moneyval. As Minister, what is your opinion of how we're going to come out of Moneyval?
Well, I'm very confident of the work and the detailed work that's been going on now for a considerable length of time, making sure that we're getting everything in place very much to face that test as such with confidence. And certainly as a department, we're working closely with other departments on that, liaising with the sectors that are involved, making sure they're very much at the heart of things, making sure the legislation changes that maybe need to be made in some areas are done, and different departments have different bits of legislation. We have ours to do, and that's what we're doing. In fact, we've got a new bill coming next Tuesday, the first reading in Keys, on an area around beneficial ownership, which is very much sitting within the central registry and the work they have to do. So these are all the things that we need to get in place to make sure we're match fit and ready to face that challenge. And I'm confident that we're doing all the right things.
And new listeners started. Moneyval's an organisation, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It all comes through from the European Union, and it's the testing looking at anti-money laundering and terrorist proliferation and other areas, and making sure that the island its regulatory system is in good tip-top shape. Basically, it's really important that we constantly look to make sure we're doing the right things as far as regulation is concerned. We built our economy on, and again we talk about that confidence of having good regulation in place, making sure that globally we are doing the right things. So these things are incredibly important.
Okay. We're with Tim Johnston, MHK, and Andy Stewart from the Department for Enterprise. So 4 weeks today, I mentioned 4 weeks today, the TT starts. And that comes under your wing, it comes under your aegis. What's this year's TT going to be like, Minister?
It's going to be brilliant. It's going to be excellent. The sun's going to shine every day, and it's going to be excellent. So we are really looking forward to it. We're just talking how quickly it comes round, and here we are 4 weeks away.
Yeah.
As you know, as soon as the one's over, we start straight away planning for the next one, and there's a huge amount of work goes on behind the scenes, which is now we all recognise this really exciting global event as it is. And obviously we've got the extra excitement this year of the filming that's going to be getting done here for the new feature film, which again is going to, I think, really uplift again the sort of global reach of what is this iconic event.
Yeah.
So there's a huge responsibility with that as well.
Is the
obviously.
TT growing?
Yes, it is. I mean, we saw last year record numbers here. I think over 50,000 visitors came last year to the TT. So year on year, it has been growing, which is really great to see. I mean, we recognise some of the challenges there are in the motorsport sectors. We've seen some of the challenges in other jurisdictions around, like Northern Ireland, where there have been issues. Yeah. So, what we've made sure we've done is kept very much ahead of those challenges, whether it's regulation, whether it's cost, insurance, and it's our job as the promoters of the event to make sure that we're doing all we can to make it as viable as possible.
Okay, and the Classic TT, where does that stand?
Yes, well, again, I think we recognise that there's been challenges with the Manx Grand Prix, and last year the decision was made from a motorsport perspective for us to support through the Classic TT, and we're looking forward again to the event this year. I think the last year's event went down well. We had a lot of really positive views about that, so we're very keen to sort of do that again this year and build on it going forward.
Okay.
It's a very important part of the broader motorsport family, and we want to see it thrive.
Okay, and Andy Stewart, who tots up all the numbers? Obviously, as Tim Johnston just said, we're 50-odd thousand people there. Where do you find that out, and how do you calculate what value TT, Classic TT, are to the Manx economy?
So it all forms part of the broader passenger survey, which is conducted independently. So there's surveys done at departure points, so obviously Douglas Sea Terminal and the airport. That's done all year round, and then obviously there's a specific time period defined for those events. The specific questions are asked about destination, duration of stay, spend whilst on island. And then ultimately that's effectively calculated up and provided as part of the passenger survey figures for those periods. Talking about the TT and it's is it going to be, is it successful? Is it absolutely? It is going from strength to strength. It's motorsport events are inherently difficult to stage. Costly with increasing costs, so therefore it's absolutely essential that we continue to drive audience and new audience when required to both attend the event in person, plan to attend the event in future years, and to contribute to its success in other ways. So the digital broadcast strategy, reaching an audience far further afield and contributing direct income, which helps support the running of the event. But I think the TT, for me, symbolises everything about what the Isle of Man does, which is it comes together. Yes, we have a role to play. The team work incredibly hard, but it absolutely relies on residents, visitors, partners from a whole host of different industries across the island to come together. It is an incredible feat to put this event on around an iconic circuit such as the Isle of Man TT course.
Okay, and just a final word on the TT, Tim John. I mean, obviously, we're on the Isle of Man. There will always be Manx crabs. There will always be naysayers. The future for the TT. What can you say on behalf of the department about the future of the TT?
Well, all I can say is, we are very much invested in the success of this event going forward. I mean, that's in the DNA to really drive forward the success of the whole event. Like I say, it is a global event, and the things we're doing are all about making sure that it's getting that sort of real openness and understanding, because we also recognise that the challenges there are and the costs involved, and it's important that we have to make those difficult decisions. We have to make the positive decisions for the future to make sure that this event is sustainable, and that is what we're determined to do.
Okay, we're with Tim Johnston, MHK, and Andy Stewart from the Department for Enterprise on Mannin Line today. By all means, do get in touch. Our texts aren't working. It's nothing to do with us. It's Manx Telecom. You can still WhatsApp on 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com.
On Saturday and Sunday at their exclusive Oatlands Road Andreas show home opening. Discover high-spec modern new builds, quality finishes, energy-efficient features, and speak with the developers. Show home open 10 to 2 every Saturday and Sunday, or by appointment.
Ramsey Care Products is now opened in St Paul's Square, Ramsey. An Aladdin's cave of stock including mobility scooters, rise recliners, household aids and more. Call 627 177 to find out more. Ramsey Care Products. Affordable mobility solutions for you.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
Day's getting lighter now, fella.
Aye, I just got myself a scutch of Manx Magic compost from Hearth. Brilliant stuff, and delivered to me driveway.
Who's that? Hearth? I thought they did solid fuel.
Aye, they do, and they do this excellent compost too. Can't wait to see the results, yes.
All delivered? That sounds good. Saves humping it back from the store in the car, and great that it's made locally. I'll be giving Hearth a call for me compost too.
For all your fire, fuel and compost needs, call Hearth on 560 577 or visit hearth.co.com.
That new furniture feeling, it can become a bit of an obsession, and that's just how we like it. Fresh collections are now in at Lifestyle Furniture. Beautiful living and dining ranges, sumptuous sofas, sensational handmade beds from Harrison Spinks, Enchanted House, and more. Plus, dazzling art and decor to complete the look. Find your new obsession. Visit Lifestyle Furniture. Pop in at Snugborough Trading Estate, Union Mills. Open 7 days a week.
Hello, I'm BethSB.com, Manx Radio's head of biker podcasts. In this general election year, Manx Radio will have an almost interminable number of programmes in the run-up to the big day when you can choose who to bin off. And for the first time, we're also hosting a live show aimed at helping all those tens of young and first-time voters, or those who've just forgotten, through the complex issue of voting. That is, confirming your name and address, stepping into a cubicle and putting an X next to the name of someone you think isn't going to be completely useless. So join us at IM1 Voting for Dummies, live at the Peel Centenary Centre from 7:30pm on the 16th of May. Tickets available online at centenarycentre.com from Celtic Gold in Peel or Oma in Ramsey. Voting for Dummies, laughing in the face of democracy.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
23 minutes past 12. And hello, Stephen. You're live with the Department for Enterprise. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Andy. Good afternoon, Department, and hello, listeners. If I could ask 3 questions, please. I'll read them all so you can think about them. The last time both you gentlemen were on, I asked about access to cash in the community, especially around the west and north of the island. I believe that's your constituency. So that's the first question. The second question is, the department headed by you were advertising free healthcare as part of their package to grow the population. You may be aware of a lecture given by Maria Brideston, who posed the question, why did we need thousands of relatively low-paid people coming to the island? So do you still offer this incentive of free healthcare? And on reflection, was it the wrong thing to do with the strain it's put on healthcare? The third item is on grant aid. I know there's a question mark over brownfield sites. I don't support your definition of it, But why are we giving millions to people who are producing what are, I think, is luxury flats, and yet we can't give any grant aid to single property owners or those who live in conservation zones? And I think the fourth question would have been, what about tourism outside of TT? So if we could start off with access to cash, what have you done since then? Because you said you were going to go away and think about it.
Okay, Tim Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for that. Well, bottom line is, as I think we spoke about this last time, clearly this links back to the access to cash report that was done in 2021, and some of the work that was put in place following that, which includes obviously meetings with likes of the Banks Association and the finance agency, keep in touch with them, and then clearly looking across the island to say, where are the issues with access to cash and what the issues are. And as far as I say, with the West and North, of looking at Peel, for example, obviously there's cash machines in Peel itself and also in Tesco's in Peel, and there is still obviously access to cash in and around the island, as would be expected for the size of the island. So that access is there.
Any cash in Ballaugh or Andreas or Kirkmichael?
No, I don't think so. No machines. No, there aren't any machines. But again, I think you have to look at the commercial viability of those and say, look at the numbers and say, is it viable to do? Clearly, there's access in the main towns,
right.
And again, if you look at the population size, we do have good coverage. But clearly, it's always going to be one of those arguments that it is what it is, and there is access there.
Right. Okay. And free healthcare, advertising jobs with free healthcare.
If I can comment on that, and very quickly just to finish access to cash for Stephen's point, and just to assure Stephen that his kind of words last time absolutely not lost, and they remain in our kind of thoughts as we go forward with further conversations. So we have had direct dialogue with the Bankers Association and the topic of banking in areas which aren't served, and we have to be honest that Peel is one of those areas where banking is clearly lacking. Access to cash may be sorted, but so we continue to absolutely have those conversations. It is not something, unfortunately, we're able to fix overnight, though, and we need to keep progressing that with the commercial banks who provide the services.
But that would seem weird, because Peel's doing nothing but grow.
Absolutely, yes.
They can't stop building in Peel, and yet you can't get cash.
So you can get cash. So it's not the getting cash. I believe that Stephen's primary challenge is the banking for businesses, right, which I just want to absolutely acknowledge, and we're not trying to shirk away from that. But you're right, and I think the growth of Peel could well be a factor in helping resolve that in the future. So in terms of free healthcare, so again, I think for clarity here, it's rather than advertising free healthcare for specific vacancies or specific promotional aspects, it's the fact that the island has a free-to-access healthcare service for those people who are resident, same as the UK, with the NHS-style model. In terms of the broader conversation about inward migration and promoting the island, there has been a considerable amount of work done on that broader inward migration piece. There are policy considerations, absolutely, right across, whether that be housing or healthcare. The island has always had to allow people to move to the island to fill key skills gaps, and I think it's really important going forward that we understand what those skills gaps are, what the type of skilled mix model will look like for migration, and how we go out and promote that. So.
Okay, and the third point was, what was it? It was on grant aid, yeah.
Yeah, well, obviously, from the DFE perspective, the scheme that we administer was the Island Infrastructure Scheme, and that is very much about looking at the use brownfield sites that have sat empty for in some cases decades, and what we can do to get the private owners of these sites to actually do something with them, and that was the whole principle of that. I think it was never about housing policy or other issues. That's sort of a wider issue. Ultimately, we want to see development happening on the island. Right. That creates jobs and opportunities.
And I think it's worth pointing out that that development scheme the money is retrospective, isn't it? It's not up front.
No, absolutely not. No, nothing is paid out until the building is completed, and that's absolutely the case. No money up front on any of the projects, and of course, by the time the building is completed, you've already had all of the activity, the building works, all of the exchequer benefit coming in from that is already coming in directly back to government anyway. So it's a very clear point to make. Nothing goes out until the building is completed.
So what would have to happen then for any scheme like this to benefit flats and first-time buyers?
Well, it depends very much on what the project is. Clearly, the key is it was about brownfield sites. Now, different brownfield sites are relevant for different things. It could be a range of things, from building offices to building a hotel, or it could be accommodation. For example, if you look at the Lake Road development in Dandara, which is now started, I think over 100 flats there, that's been developed. So that the Island Infrastructure Scheme is relevant for that, because it's, again, a brownfield site that's sat empty, and it's great to see that that's going to be developed into a range of flats. We've seen also an application in the south of the island for what's called luxury flats. So again, there is a demand for them. So, we can't cover every base. It's not a social policy. It's saying there is demand for certain developments in certain places, and if we can help support to get those developments over the line actually happening, then that's a benefit to the broader economy. That is what we're here for. We're here for as a department. As I say, we said at the start of this, we are here to support the economy in the broadest sense.
Okay, Stephen, what were you at issue with over brownfield sites?
Well, I think that the question mark over brownfield sites is a red herring. I hear what the Minister has said. He hasn't addressed the single political point, I suppose, but if he's here as the Minister for Enterprise, he's got to abide by their policy. But there is an election coming, and it would be interesting to know, does this MHK support the concept of grant aid for single property owners who may live in old parts of the island where they need help to maintain their properties? So that's something that should, I feel, be considered. Access to cash, I would think, from the answers given, we're no further ahead with that. We don't seem to have any contrition about the bringing people in who are taking advantage of our healthcare system, but I do believe there is a movement to introduce a healthcare surcharge for those wanting to move here, which is a step in the right direction.
What would you see? What would you see as the answer, Stephen, to the access to cash issue?
Well, I would see the issue is that the department is not being, and I don't blame the department, it would have to be a Council of Ministers decision. I think there's not enough flexing of muscles to say to the banks that, well, you must provide a banking hub, certainly in the west, possibly in the south, and maybe in the north as the banks contract. So I think that disappoints me, that there's no real governance in saying you must provide, and I think that's to be really, it's a disappointment. Okay. And I understand that, where they're frightened to do it.
Okay, all right.
If I can say that, I think I hear the point, and I think it's certainly not a case of, as we're perfectly happy to have those conversations, and we have had those conversations. It's not just a DFE issue, obviously, it's broader than us, but we are in principle. But of course, we also have to understand what is the problem and what the challenge is. And of course, what we're seeing, the reason the decisions that these banks have withdrawn services are commercial decisions, because fewer and fewer people are actually physically going into banks. They're using different ways of accessing cash. That is also a reality that we have to face as well, and that doesn't mean it's an easy decision, and it does mean that some people feel disenfranchised, and I accept that, but there's always a difficult balance with that one.
Okay, all right, Stephen, we appreciate your call. Thanks for being with us today. Good to hear from you. Let's go to, I think it's Martin with us now. Hi, Martin. Is this Martin? It's not Martin on 4. We'll find somebody else. Oh, and in that case, here's a message in from Lucy. It's Lucy George at the Welbeck Hotel. Why are we still looking to promote the TT? The TT's been well known for years and years. We don't need to do that anymore, whereas you never hear a thing about car rallies, which bring in millions of pounds. Certainly helps, as in the shoulder months where we need it most. People with car rallies spend so much getting here, eating out, accommodation, but can you promise that you do your utmost to support Rally, MGP and the Southern 100? At the moment, the rally guys aren't getting enough support from the government. They're unpaid and deserve more respect. That's Lucy.
Okay, well, thanks, Lucy. I mean, I think it would be a little bit perverse of us not to be, supporting the TT. It's such an important event for us and for across the whole economy. And again, I think we all benefit. The whole economy benefits from the TT and the expenditure that goes on. So certainly, it's something we would want to continue to promote. I think it's important. You're quite right. There are lots of different events, and I think as a department we do support. We're very supportive of the rallies on the island. Always happy to have those conversations. We have had conversations with them recently about what we can do to help and support them, and we'll continue to do so. Again, it's great to see the Southern 100 doing so well. Obviously, it had some really difficult challenges this last few years, but they've got some really solid plans in place, and we're happy to support them where we can. And again, we've already talked about the Manx Grand Prix and the work we're doing. That is why we brought the Classic TT back as well, to really help give the event a good opportunity for the future. We do, through our what's called our TED scheme, we do support all sorts of different areas, whether it's sports clubs, darts festivals, other things. We're always looking to support and offer funding where we can to get teams and groups to come to the island.
Okay, and here's a message in from Patricia. Given the support for the completion of the horse tramway to the sea terminal from organisations involved in the tourism industry, Blue Badge Guide, can the Minister explain what support his department could give to the project, particularly in view of the fact that Tynwald requested business case for this to be produced in May? Tynwald, it's not on the register of business, understood that the latter hasn't been supported by the Treasury. The horse trams.
Indeed, yes, and obviously we had a debate recently in Tynwald, which I stood up and was very pleased to support. We're very pleased to see the plans coming forward for the reinstatement of the horse trams back to the sea terminal. From a department point of view, clearly through Visit, we recognise the importance of our heritage rail system, and clearly the trams are a very integral part of that. So we'll be delighted to see that happening, and certainly from a DFE perspective, we will be happy to support in any way we can to sort of work on the thinking of how that can be done and help support that. One of the things I mentioned in the debate is we have our cruise ships coming in regularly now, which is great to see, to the island, and being able to link cruise passengers at the sea terminal, get them onto the horse trams, get them down onto the electric railway. I think that's a great thing, and that's something we'll be happy to help through visitor support.
Okay, and a message in now regarding this is a practical thing regarding any wind turbines that may or may not appear. The May Tynwald does contain an item relating to the holding of the Red Arrows display over Douglas at the time of the TT. No flying below 8,000 feet with 6 nautical miles of Douglas Bay. Has the department considered how this might be affected in the future if construction of wind turbines that are 1,100 feet tall on the edge of the 6-mile nautical limit to which the height restrictions apply? You're looking that far ahead?
Not quite. I think, as I say, certainly, of course, the Red Arrows do displays across the world in all sorts of different places and different challenges. And I ultimately assume that as part of any process that they would have to assess any location to ensure it's safe and ensure and understand what the topography is and what high points there are around. So that's all I can really say on that.
Okay, Thank you, Patricia. And I think David's with us now. Hi, David. You're live with the Department for Enterprise.
Oh, good afternoon, Andy, and good afternoon, gentlemen. My question is for both of you, actually, and it is: to what extent do you, Minister, and you, Chief Exec, get involved with freedom of information responses within your department? And I'm specifically referring to the Information Commissioner's recent decision notice against the DFE, applying to a blanket exemption to material related to the decision to give that £2.5 million you get interest-free loan to King William's College, which is a subject you know is politically sensitive from the minuted comments of Mrs. Maltby, of all people, in your internal meetings. The Information Commission, as you know, upheld the requester's complaint. You sent a redrafted response, and that redraft is now back with the Information Commissioner to see if she can direct your department to release documentation. But my question is, to what extent do you personally get involved, or do you just leave it to your governance officers?
Okay, who wants to take that? Minister or...
I'll take that one, Andy.
Okay.
So it's an administrative process, the freedom of information, when we receive a request and it goes through the process. It's administered at operational and team level, but I'm not shying away from the fact that I see every single freedom of information response. So ultimately, I'm accountable for that. And equally, when we receive an ICO decision notice, which I absolutely know the one that David refers to, that does happen. It happens infrequently, but it does happen, and we absolutely take that on board. And if we've not done something correctly, or we believe we've taken an interpretation which is incorrect, then we fully respect that decision, and we follow a due process from that point on. But no, it's ultimately I'm accountable. I see them. Politically, it's not a political process. There is visibility, but ultimately, it's an administrative process.
Okay, David?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to know to what extent. So the Minister doesn't actually see the responses then? The first he may see is when the press get hold of it, or do you brief him and say, look, Minister, you need to be aware of this? Because as we know, that loan was a particular case which we know was very, very politically sensitive, especially when, the South is crying out for a new secondary school, but there's no even any money allocated to that as yet. But we're giving money to King William's College, which the independent auditors have a grave concern about its future financial viability. The due diligence you did on that process, CEO, I think was absolutely shocking, and I say that as a chartered secretary.
And I fully respect your position, but I also respect the fact that I don't necessarily agree with your position.
Okay.
That's not what I said politically about the answers to FOIs. They are visible, but only at the end of the process.
Okay.
So they're seen.
It's a loan, isn't it, to King William's College? It's not a grant or anything.
Correct.
That's right. That's correct. I mean, ultimately, I appreciate this that matter created some interest, understandably. We have to look at every application on its merits. We have to set it against the strict guidelines we have under our financial assistance scheme, which is what we do. As again, we talked about at the start of this programme, Andy, what we do as a department, how we support our economy. Clearly, you look at it in different ways. My view is, and the view of the department is very much that King William's College is probably, if not one of the biggest employers in the south of the island. About 180 people working at that school, putting about £3 million a year of exchequer benefit into the economy, just in wages alone, never mind the fact that they're also providing a private education offering, which is a really important part of our offering as an island, and important for people who want to come and send their children here, and also for families on the island, the majority of whom of the children at King William's College are island based. Okay. So it is an important part of our whole landscape and fabric, having King William's College. Okay. and it fits within the guidelines of any support, and so I'm perfectly confident with what we've done.
And is there a time frame for the repayment of the loan?
Yes, that's set out. That's set out in the offer and the guidelines.
Okay. All right, David, final word.
I totally disagree with what Mr. Johnston has said. They were working on 2023 accounts because the King William's College were late. I sourced the King William's College accounts from the Attorney General, and they were late submitted them. They failed to follow charities law. They were well late. I'd like to know whether they've seen the 2025 accounts, actually, and see what they think of those.
Okay, all right. Well, you've made your points. We have to leave it there and move on, because we finally found Martin. Hi, Martin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just listening to the programme today, all I'm hearing is handouts and giveaways, support grants and this, that, the other. Couple of points. What about GDP growth? How do we do that? And one of your biggest stumbling blocks at the moment on the Isle of Man is basically accommodation, where we've tried to bring people over to start up high-tech advanced engineering. Whilst there's plenty of warehouse space, factory space, there's just nowhere to put people. All of the estate agents have run out of rental properties. HMOs, it's a sad indication that HMOs are on the rise, and that's to accommodate low-skill, low-paid workers. My point here is that we've got 330,000 square feet of unoccupied office space on the island. Why doesn't the government get together with property gurus and start a sovereign wealth fund and start transferring the use of these offices, which, let's face it, with the march of technology, offices are a thing of the past. Let's start converting them into apartments, duplexes, because the brain drain partly over here is people can't afford to get on the ladder. Young Manx people have to move across. But let's do a little bit more about GDP growth through properties.
Okay.
That's just the point.
All right, appreciate that. Tim Johnston?
Yes, thank you, Martin. I think I think we recognise the challenge around accommodation. It's been an issue for a while, and I think what we can say is we are seeing a pretty comprehensive range of sort of building going on across the island when it comes to accommodation. These things do take time, clearly, but there are new developments coming on stream. Like I say, we just talked about the Island Infrastructure Scheme, some of the work they're doing and to build more accommodation. So there's certainly, from a government perspective, there's certainly the offer there to help facilitate that process to encourage it.
You must get this tale though that Martin's been talking. You must hear this.
Yeah, look, I think absolutely. I think when it comes to housing, it was probably it was a key issue at the last election. And I would love to be able to sit here now and say it's been resolved, but it hasn't. But there's a lot going on to resolve it. But it is a challenge. There's no doubt about it. I mean, as far as improving things in town and reconverting again, there's no issue with that. I think ultimately we're always happy and willing to have conversations with property owners. I mean, again, I think sometimes the assumption that government makes these decisions, I mean, sometimes these have to be driven by the ideas coming forward as well, and where we can help. So on the one hand, we talk about criticising potentially giving out grants and incentives, but the whole point of that is to try and help to help improve these areas. Okay, so
if a building owner who's got unsold office space at the moment wanted to apply for a change of use, how does that process work? Is that planning?
That's a planning. I mean, that is a planning process, and that's something that would have to be looked at. I imagine it could be challenging. It would depend on what the area is and what the broader policy is. Yeah. But it's certainly worth having conversations. One thing we have done with our local economy strategy last year that we launched is that we are incentivising property owners who have got, say, retail properties who have got empty upstairs vacant rooms to convert them back to accommodation, and we offer grants for that because, again, what we're wanting to do is encourage those redevelopments, encourage people living back in our towns and villages.
Okay, final word, Martin.
Yeah, I just think that the Manx government should be creating a sovereign wealth fund which benefits the island. We've got problems coming up in, I think, 2045 with NI contributions. We've become a retirement home. It's just the way things have evolved. I think we need to talk to the civil service, basically, because ministers come and go, and I'm happy to come in and discuss the plan more openly.
You don't sound very confident, Martin.
No, I just think we're missing a trick because everything is around throwing money at things and incentivise people who have got money to go and do things. Okay, I'm not saying I'm a socialist, but I'm thinking that government could actually play a more active role and increase the balance sheet through ownership of these properties, either through compulsory purchase or purchasing at a commercial rate. And then, it's a bit like the gas field. That should be sovereign wealth going into paying for the future of the island. As I see it, we don't have any serious GDP programs going on. We're talking very nicely about this, that, and the other, and what's available to give away. Though we're not making anything. That's my big problem, and I fear for the future.
Okay. Appreciate your call. Thanks, Martin. Thanks for being with us today.
Charity of the Week, brought to you by Kell Properties.
Rob Vine Fund provides emergency medical support, training and equipment across the Isle of Man. We aim to expand life-saving services through funding and partnerships. We're seeking community support, volunteers and donations to grow our impact. To get involved or learn more, visit our website, robvinefund.im, or call 628 999. Together, we save lives.
This advert is brought to you by Kell Properties.
Isle of Man Census 2026 is underway. Please complete and return your household form. You can complete it online at the Census 26 website using a phone, tablet or computer. If you'd rather not complete it online, you can also do it on paper, by phone or face-to-face with a census officer. For details, call 685 700 between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday or email census@gov.im. You can also visit the Census Office at Customs House Douglas for advice and to drop off forms. More information is available at gov.im/census26.
At Bond Fabrics, we're not just a fabric shop. As well as curtains and upholstery and dress and costume fabrics, we've knitting and crocheting wools, made-to-measure curtain and blind service, plus poles and tracks. Visit Strand Street Douglas, call 611856 or see bondfabrics.im.
Drive smarter, drive more reliable, drive a great deal at Mannin Motors. With a superb range of cars for every budget, always available. And if we don't have it, we'll source it. Plus, servicing, valeting and prestige detailing too. Mannin Motors, Richmond Hill, Douglas. Find us on Facebook or call 420 420. That's 420 420. Drive a better bargain at Mannin Motors.
The latest edition of Manx Radio's Breath Mindfulness podcast with Karen Hardman is available now.
Tension in the shoulder blades and the back of your neck. Let that release.
Brought to you by the Good Health Store on Station Road in Port Erin.
You see a cosy cabin in the distance, nestled among the trees. You notice all the intricate details, so you won't forget. It's too magical.
The latest in the Breath Mindfulness series with Karen Hardman, and available now at manxradio.com.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Howard's with us now. Hi, Howard. You're live with the Department for Enterprise.
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, gentlemen. I don't know whether your remit will cover this, but if you set out from the sea terminal, coming off the boat or as a cruise line guest, you go along the promenade, and apart from where they're building now for the travel lodge, which should be all right when it's finished, a lot of the hotels, okay, Victorian, they're old, but they are looking tired. And then you get to where Jack's Bar is, and there was a hotel there, Marina, and that lay empty for years. You could see right up through the building and out through the roof. And there was an order put against it as a dereliction, but they got round that by putting in for planning permission, and they have planning permission for X number of apartments. So all that amounted to was there were some posters went up in the front of the building advertising the fact that now has planning permission, so it stays derelict. Then you move a little further along where the hotel used to be the Mitre. That's a brownfield site. Then you go further along again, over on what used to be always the posh end of the promenade, the Regal. And I think the police used to use that for training, etc. But that's all boarded up now. Now, that's not a very attractive site for anybody that's coming to visit our island.
Okay.
It is looking extremely shabby and sad nowadays.
Okay. All right. So through Department for Enterprise, Visit Isle of Man will be encouraging people to come here, and we have derelict properties on our front page, as it were. What's your opinion on that, Tim Johnston?
Well, it's certainly not something we want to see. I can certainly sympathise with that. I think it's absolutely the gateway into the island. I think the sort of broader debate around empty properties and derelict properties is not something that sort of sits in the purview of the department. I think certainly there's 2 areas of work that's been going on. I think I know Douglas City Council have been doing work on looking at how they can encourage owners of derelict properties to do something with them around rates legislation and other areas, and it's something that Treasury have also come forward with as well, because we recognise that it's not right that people can just sit on these buildings or find loopholes around just allow them to sit and deteriorate. So I'm certainly very supportive of some of the legislative changes that I think are planned to sort of tackle that issue.
Is there anything Visit Isle of Man can do or say to move that along?
I don't think directly, no. I think where Visit Isle of Man can certainly help is if you've got someone who maybe has a property, who's keen, or has a business who's keen, obviously, to reinvest and maybe improve. And certainly there are things we can do through the financial assistance scheme to help hoteliers, etc., to invest and move things forward in that sense.
Okay, all right, Howard. Thanks for calling today. Well, we didn't talk about Digital Isle of Man, which is the tech sector of the Isle of Man. We hardly talked about Finance Isle of Man, which promotes the financial and professional services industry. But you Tim Johnston, you say everything you think is moving along the right. Oh, one question, by the way. Angela dropped a note in, and you know what I'm going to say. MHK for Air and Michael, will you be standing in September?
That is not a decision I've yet made, Andy. I think to be honest, I need to. I'm planning to sit down with the family and talk about it. I think, as you can understand, it's a big decision. It's been a challenging 5 years. It's been a great privilege, but I need to sit down with the family and decide whether I'm going to put my hat into the ring again.
Have you enjoyed the past 5 years?
I found it very rewarding. I think it's been, very challenging at times. Some parts of it I think none of us like, but other parts have been a real privilege.
Okay. All right. Thanks for being with us today, and thanks to Andy Stewart for being with us today. Good to talk to you. Thanks for all your words today. So there we are. That's the Enterprise Minister. By the way, next Monday, the Chief Minister was due to be on this Wednesday. He's on next Monday, May the 11th. Alfred Cannon, MHK Chief Minister. And also next week, Nick Kay, the pharmacist, is on as well. In the meantime, we're back with another open line tomorrow. Thanks to Michelle on the phones today. And thanks to you for taking part in Mannin Line.
WINT